This video is sponsored by Bombas. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Handyman Graham, and today we're going to be making a whole bunch of picture frames. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, smash that like button too, because we're at over 100,000 subscribers, which is so crazy. So thank you all so much for all the support. So for today's video, Alexander's tasked me with making a whole bunch of picture frames for Niall and Freya's maximalist gallery wall. Niall and Freya had a whole bunch of unframed art that I picked up and I'm gonna be using for these projects. Rather than make a whole bunch of picture frames that are all kind of the same difficulty to make, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of picture frames of varying difficulties, and they're gonna look vastly different from one another, which is the whole point of a maximalist gallery wall to begin with. I'm gonna split it up into 30-minute, 3-hour, and 3-day picture frames. The 30-minute frames are gonna be more approachable. They're gonna require less tools, less expertise. The 3-hour frames are gonna be more of like an intermediate difficulty level that will require a little bit more tools. And then the 3-day frames are gonna require a whole bunch of tools. It's gonna be really difficult. I'm gonna challenge myself and hopefully inspire you guys to do some of these projects at home too. Before I get started on this, I have to put some ideas down on paper. I'm thinking for the 30-minute frames, I'm probably just gonna use some pre-existing frames, maybe find something at the thrift store and make some like new facades that kind of like stick over top of the frame. For the 3-hour frames, I'm probably gonna make something that's a little bit more fancy, that's custom made using maybe like some nicer materials. And lastly, for the 3-day frames, I'm gonna do something a little bit more intricate, like an end grain checkerboard frame, which I've never really seen before. So it's just gonna require like a lot more glue, a lot more cuts. And it's just gonna challenge me because it's gonna require a lot more precision, a lot more like attention to detail, a lot more finishing work. All right, so now that I have some ideas down on paper, it's time to gather the materials. Before I head over to the hardware store, I'm gonna swing by my local thrift store to see if there's anything that kind of like inspires me, like some quality picture frames that I can cut down to fit smaller pieces of art, maybe something I can repurpose into a frame, who knows? So I'm just looking for some quality materials such as wood, glass, and some quality hanging hardware on the back. Wow, it's so busy in here. But I've got a couple good frames and I'm gonna go cash out. All right, so I got way more than I need from the thrift store. That's because I don't really have a plan yet going into this. I don't really know how many picture frames I'm gonna be able to make in this amount of time, but I know that I have more than enough for what I need. Just saw a really cool bookcase back there that had like a wood print MDF backing board, which I think would be pretty cool for one of our frames. Okay, this is sick. It is 1/8 inch thick, like pine printed MDF. So this is gonna be awesome for cutting out some shapes for our frames. I'm gonna try to bike this back to the workshop. I'm gonna put the camera down just so I can kind of concentrate on biking, and I'll see you guys back at the workshop. Okay, made it back in one piece. That was the busiest I've ever seen Valley Village, but I did find some good stuff. I got Contact, one of my favorite movies. Free Willy. Free Willy has that banger of a soundtrack that I can just have playing in the background. I got this awesome clock. I love the fact that it's a solid wood frame, and I love the fact that it has this glass on it. I thought we could turn this into a frame of some sort. Oh, I got this awesome frame. This one is $5 as well. I don't know, it just looks like a nice fancy frame. It is MDF as well, but I thought that we could probably resize it and paint it, you know, for a fun print or something. I'm gonna get going to Home Depot, see what they got there. Now it's time to hit the hardware store to get materials for the 3-hour and 3-day frames. For the 3-hour frames, I'm picking up some red oak and some basswood dimensional lumber. This will be a lot easier to cut down and miter because they're already dimensional, so there's not a lot of work you gotta do to make it look nice. Made it. Okay, it's officially that time for holiday gifts, and my recommendations for everybody on your holiday list is Bombas. You guys know I love to wear Bombas on my long runs, at the gym, and during long work days in the workshop. And I've just added the Sunday slippers to my rotation as well. I live on the ground floor in my building, and it gets really cold in the winter. And the Sunday slippers are like the perfect accessory to stay warm all winter long.
Oh, those look nice.
Those are really nice. I'm trying to keep my heat off as long as possible, keep the electricity bills down. They have different socks for different purposes. They have ankle length running socks, wool socks for those that want to keep their feet warm in the winter. They have a sock for every single purpose and for every single person's personal preference. If you're having a hard time finding a gift for somebody, Bombas has a gift guide online to help you find the perfect gift for everybody on your list. With Bombas Give Back program, every item purchased is an item donated, which is so important, especially around this time of year. Bombas donates the 3 most needed items in shelters, which are underwear, socks, and t-shirts. So you can feel good finding the perfect gift for somebody, but also know that you're giving back at the same time. You can use my code GRAHAM for 20% off your first purchase by using the link in the description or using the QR code. They also have a 100% happiness guarantee, which means that you can return or exchange items free of charge if you're unhappy with your purchase. And there's also international shipping to over 200 countries. I personally love getting socks for Christmas. So if any of my friends or family are watching, I'm size large and I love the running half calf socks, preferably in white. And I hope you guys get to find some socks for yourself as well. All right, so back to the frames. Okay, so I got all the material back to the workshop. Everything's unloaded. I'm gonna get started on the 3-day-long frame builds, just because they're gonna take 3 days to do. As glue is drying, I can get started on the 3-hour or the 30-minute frames in between. First things first, I'm gonna see what wood I have. Just take stock of all the hardwood that I can work with for these 3-day long projects. Just gonna grab some wood from the wood pile, see what I got. All right, I got some lengths of walnut, this big length of cherry, some more walnut, got some oak lengths here. I think now that I got the material, the next thing I have to figure out is what the heck I'm actually making. This is gonna be a 3-day project. Now, I'm not saying it's gonna take the full 3 days, but I'm gonna give myself 3 days to finish it. Now I have to figure out how I'm gonna do checkerboard frame and the wavy checkerboard frame. I found the person's Instagram, handydandy_brandy. She does these really cool wavy cutting boards. All right, so she's got 2 panels, double-sided tape, puts the panels on top of each other, kind of squishes them together, cuts them all so they're the exact same. Then you can alternate colors, clamp them, glue, feed them through your thickness planer, clean up the glue. Then you do it all over again, perpendicular to those first cuts. Thickness planer, clean them up. Boom, done. And she said this, feel free to make one yourself or get one from me if you don't have a warehouse full of woodworking equipment, lol. Well, we will be making one ourselves. All right, so first things first is we're gonna get some of that wood together and we're gonna make 2 panels of contrasting wood tones. I already had a mahogany panel that was laying around the workshop. I'm gonna be using, for the contrasting wood, a maple board that I picked up from the hardware store. So I'm cutting the maple board down into equal lengths and gluing it up into a panel. I'm just using some wood glue and some clamps to get it done. I'm just making this maple panel roughly the same size as the mahogany panel that I already had. As the wavy checkerboard panels are sitting aside and drying, I'm gonna move on to the next 3-day frame project, which is gonna be the end grain checkerboard frame. You often see end grain checkerboards in the form of like chessboards or cutting boards, but I've never really seen one in the form of a frame before. So I had some scrap black walnut and cherry laying around from previous projects that we've done. So I think I'm gonna combine those 2 together and those are gonna be the contrasting wood tones for this project. First step I gotta do is I'm cutting all of the wood down to the exact same dimension. And this is so important because the checkerboard is all very uniform. Like every single square is the exact same size. And if one square is a little bit off, it's gonna throw off the rest of the pattern. So we just have to make sure that we're cutting them all down to the same size. So then I'm taking all those strips and I'm marking all the sides and running them through my thickness planer so that it gets rid of all the burn marks from the table saw. Just kind of like flattens them out and smooths them down. So I'm organizing all the strips onto some pipe clamps and I'm alternating the dark and light wood so that we get that checkerboard pattern. And I'm just applying a whole bunch of wood glue and clamping them all together until the wood glue is dry. So while the glue dries on the checkerboard frame, I'm gonna move on to the edge grain 3-day frame, AKA the bowling shirt frame. So an edge grain board is a lot like an end grain board, but the difference is that rather than like the grain facing upwards, the grain runs lengthwise. So this is just a lot easier to make. I'm using some leftover walnut, some cherry, and I'm gluing all the strips together with a whole bunch of wood glue and some clamps.
I'm powering up the clamps.
All right, so I got the 2 boards glued up here. It was quite the process. This one's looking great. Like, I love the darker cherry wood tones and with the dark walnut. It's like very moody. These are looking great. I think when I come back in the morning, we can cut these up and re-glue them, which should be really cool. I don't know what the f I'm saying. Anyways, hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday morning. Morning, y'all. It's Monday morning, and I can start taking these clamps off these boards. Very excited. I'm unclamping the checkerboard panel and just inspecting it. Whoa. Nice and flat. I'm using my belt sander just to clean up the glue a little bit. Some of the pieces were glued a little bit crooked, so I'm just cleaning it up so that when we cut it back into strips, they'll glue together quite nicely. So just like how we had strips that we glued into a panel, this time we're taking the panel and we're cutting it back into strips. So every other strip that I've cut, I'm turning around 180 degrees so that the pattern is alternating. I'm laying those strips onto some pipe clamps. I'm applying a liberal amount of glue and once again, clamping everything together and putting it aside until the wood glue dries. So now that I have all the tools out, I'm cleaning up the bowling shirt edge grain board using the random orbital sander just up until 80 grit sandpaper. So now that the edge grain bowling shirt and the end grain checkerboard are roughly at the same point now, I can jump back over to the wavy checkerboard frame. I've sandwiched the mahogany panel and the maple panel together using some CA glue and some painter's tape. This is just gonna hold everything together while I cut it into pieces using my bandsaw. Just gotta press down for like 10 seconds. So I'm just cutting some like organic wavy lines here. I don't have like pencil lines on the panels or anything. I'm just kind of like going with my gut, trying to do some wavy lines to the best of my ability with this dinky little bandsaw. I'm separating the dark and the light wood apart, and I'm taking the 2 panels and alternating the pieces so it goes dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, and gluing them all together and clamping it until the wood glue dries. Wow, okay, so I've got the bowling shirt board, checkerboard, and we got the wavy board glued up. Okay, the next step is flattening the end grain cutting board. So you can do this by belt sanding, orbital palm sander, all sorts of stuff. But instead, I do have a CNC machine, and I am so sorry that I'm gonna use the CNC machine because it is not at all an approachable tool. I've had this in the workshop for a couple years now, but I've realized that I just love working with my hands so much more than working with computer tools. I've got a router with a surfacing bit. It's just gonna just skim coat the top little bit of the end grain cutting board and just remove the tiniest bit of material. It's gonna flatten it all to the same plane. Okay, we got our checkerboard frame looking pretty good. I'm gonna put this aside and gonna jump back over to the edge grain bowling shirt frame. So I'm just cleaning up the edges using my table saw and cutting out the center of the picture frame using my jigsaw. I'm using a flush cut handsaw just to cut into the inside corners. I'm using a router and a chamfer bit just to add a little chamfer on the inside and the outside of the picture frame. I'm then routing out a whole bunch of material from the back side so that the glass and the picture has a place to sit inside of. Okay, I have one frame kind of close to being done. I'm gonna cut the glass for it right now. So I have this pistol grip glass cutter. Has like a little reservoir to put oil in it. I just put like 3-in-1 oil in it and it seems to do the trick. I'm sure there's a specific type of oil you're supposed to put in. I have the glass on a flat surface. My tip for cutting glass is you always want to etch the surface just one time without stopping. There we go. Another benefit of this glass cutter is it has this metal cap for the oil on the back. And I use that as a little hammer. I will just tap just so gently on the line all the way down. Just tapping, just trying to fracture that glass along that etch mark. There we go. One more cut. There we go. Okay, let's see if this fits. All right, we have one frame finished. Nice. What do you guys think of a bowling shirt? Yay or nay? Is it worth 3 days? It's Wednesday. I got material last Thursday. Is it worth it? I don't know. It seems a little dinky, but it's cool. All right, on to the next one. So I'm pretty much gonna do the same process that I did to the bowling shirt frame for the checker frame. Probably just gonna blast through this process. I'm tracing a roll of tape on the inside corners and using my jigsaw to cut out those curved shapes. Okay. I'm sanding everything down with some hand sandpaper, but also using my oscillating tabletop sander for the inside corners. I'm following the exact same process on the outside corners. I'm smoothing down the outside edges using my tabletop belt sander. Again, I'm carving out the back of the frame so that the picture and the glass has a place to sit inside of. I'm following the exact same process that I followed for the bowling shirt edge grain frame, except that I'm gonna be rounding the edges rather than chamfering the edges. I'm sanding everything down from 80 grit sandpaper up until 400 grit sandpaper. Make a bunch of frames, they said. It'd be fun, they said. Boom. I think this is gonna be the cover for the YouTube video. Right now. Okay. Wow, look at this. This looks awesome. I think I'm gonna have to leave it at these 2 frames. I don't know if I can do another 3-day frame. I'm running out of time here. This one would look really cool. I just don't know if I have time to do it. So I'm gonna leave this. Took on a little bit too much. For now, I'm gonna apply some of this stuff. It's hardwood floor finish. And then I'm gonna let it dry overnight and I can move on to the 3-hour frames tomorrow. So pretty excited. All right, good morning. The finish is dry. It looks incredible. I love it. Nice and shiny and oof, perfect sheen. So yeah, I'm gonna assemble these picture frames, put them together, figure out the hanging hardware, all that sort of stuff, clean up the glass, and I can start moving on to the next frames. So stoked. For the edge grain board, I'm using some small finishing nails to hold the art in place. All right, it's done. I put all the hardware on the back. I just made these little bracket things out of some picture hangers. I didn't show it on camera because I'm at my limit with this. I just cut those up, put them on the back like so, and put some picture wire. So this one is done. I'm thinking maybe I sign the back. I don't know. I spent so much time on this, I should probably do something. All right, now it's time to move on to 3-hour frames. I do feel bad about the wavy checkerboard frame, but if I have time tomorrow or something, I can continue on with it, but I have to keep going because I only have 2 frames made and we have a lot of art to frame still, so I gotta keep going. So now we're moving on to the 3-hour frames. These are a little bit more approachable frames that you can bang out in like 3 hours or less. First piece of art we're gonna make a frame for is pears in bowls. I'm literally gonna copy the frame that this piece of art already has. So it's kind of like floating in the frame. It's literally just screwed into the back. So I'm gonna try to figure out a better way to mount the art in the frame. This is like some cheap like pine wood and it's missing a piece on the bottom. So I'm gonna recreate it with that piece of red oak that we picked up from Home Depot. I'm gonna make a nice profile on the edges, insert some wood on the back side. Not a lot is gonna go into this, so I feel confident I can bang this frame out in like 3 hours or less. Although it is lunchtime in 18 minutes. First things first, table saw channel. I'm just cutting out a little notch along the entire length of the wood using my table saw that's a 1/2 inch deep. This is just so I can insert a 1/2 inch backing board into the frame once everything's glued together. Next step is the router. So I'm just gonna give a little chamfer on the inside edge and then a round over on the outside edge. So my tip for you guys is just to do the majority of the work while the board is all one piece before you cut it into miters, because you can just sand the whole thing down first and shape the edges all in one go. And that when you do cut it up into small pieces, they're all gonna be like shaped and sanded to the same amount. Okay, nice. Now that we have these frame pieces all sanded down, we can start cutting the miters in them. Focus. Will it focus? No? Oh, there it goes. Because I'm gonna be cutting it on the back side, there's gonna be like tear out from the blade spinning like this. So in order to prevent that, I'm just gonna wrap each cut with some painter's tape and it's just gonna prevent the wood fibers from tearing out. Okay, well it didn't do that great a job, but it is nice and clean-ish. Maybe I could have put more tape on there. Anyways, so whenever I make a measurement, I always use my speed square. I'm always gonna put a line. Then of course, the direction of your miter in, and then an X on the side that is gonna be the cutoff. Much cleaner. Another tip is rather than like measuring and cutting each piece individually, use that one cut as your template and just trace that piece onto the other piece because you're gonna get 2 pieces that are the exact same every time. Perfect. All right, so all the pieces are cut. Now I'm gonna glue it together. I'm gonna glue this one. And I know it's a 3-hour frame, but I find that I only really need to like clamp things for like 30 minutes to an hour until the glue is like strong enough to hold it. For another frame, maybe I'll use the L brackets, but I don't know. Just wanted this to look really nice because I'm pretty proud of these miters. So I wanted to glue them together. But yeah, this is looking great. Sick. It's really hard to clamp this together because you want to clamp in this direction, but there's nothing for the clamps to like grab onto. So I use just a regular old ratchet strap and some cardboard to protect the corners, because as you tighten the ratchet strap, it's likely to damage the edge there. So I just kind of grab some cardboard and I just make little protection thingies. Inside corners are really, really hard to clean up. So I always put painter's tape on the inside corner, not all the way into the corner because you don't want to accidentally glue. So it's just like maybe a 32 of an inch, just the tiniest little bit away from the edge there. And this just prevents the wood glue from squeezing out and getting all over the wood on the inside of the frame. And my tip for the glue is glue all sides. So even though you only really need to glue the one face, it's just, you don't want to kind of skimp out on the glue and have this frame fall apart, and then you're looking at a 4-hour frame rather than a 3-hour frame. I'm just gonna kind of gently place everything together. The glue will kind of hold it in place. Gonna put the ratchet strap around. I've got an extra piece of cardboard because I'm gonna put it underneath there. Just gently starting to tighten. And you wanna make sure all the frame pieces are lined up. Perfect. And I just get inside edges where the painter's tape is and just clean everything up. You can also use a little putty knife. Look, it's a frame. We did it. Quality. Anyways, you may be asking, well, how the heck are we gonna put the painting inside this frame? Well, remember when we notched the backside of the frame? That is for a 1/2-inch piece of plywood to fit on the backside. And then we're gonna secure the painting to that piece of plywood. And it's all gonna come together. So I'm gonna cut down that piece of plywood right now. This doesn't need to be fancy because it's not gonna be seen. Now, I guess getting a straight piece of plywood would help, but yeah, this one's kind of cupped. But it's okay, we'll put some screws in. Hell yes. I'm just securing some 3/4-inch plywood on the inside of the frame, and this just allows the painting to have something to be mounted to within the nice frame that we just made. Battery would help. I'm securing the backing board to the frame using some screws, and I'm just writing out little grooves for some keyhole brackets on the backside. This will just allow the floating frame to sit perfectly flush against the wall, and it just will make it look nice and crisp and clean. Okay, it's time for another 3-hour frame. It's time for another 3-hour frame. So I'm gonna make this one pretty much exactly like the last one. Gonna make a box out of wood where the art's gonna fit in the middle. I'm gonna have it so it hovers a little bit. Just because this is the same dimension as the other frame, I didn't really want it to look the same. So I think with this one, I'm gonna make it look exactly like the old one, but I'm gonna paint this one instead. This one is gonna be a pretty zippy process. All right, the glue is mostly dry on these frames. I'm just gonna sand down the outside mitered edges, and then I'm just gonna prime them and paint them outside in the garage bay. So I'm pretty close to being done here. Okay, I'm gonna spray these frames with some shellac primer. The reason why I'm using this one is because it has like such a fast working time. Like, I'll be able to start spraying actual paint coat on here within like 20 minutes of applying this stuff. So I'll be done these frames in like the next hour, and I think I'm like just about at the 2-hour mark right now for these. We're looking at like a solid 3-hour project for these frames. All right, so that took a whole 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna prep the paint. So I'm gonna be using Tan Lines by Backdrop. This is the same paint that we're gonna be painting the ceiling in Niles and Freya's apartment. Even though this is wall paint, because I used that super durable shellac primer, I'm not too concerned with this paint being sprayed onto the frames. Frames are just one of those things that once they're up on the wall, you don't touch them for a couple years, so I don't really have anything to worry about the durability of the paint. This is just standard wall paint, but I think it's gonna be totally fine. All right, now it's time for some 30-minute frames. I'm so excited for this because these are gonna be the easiest frames that I've made this entire week. I've got like a couple different ideas here. One, we're gonna make from scratch. The second, we're gonna repurpose a frame. Third, we're gonna resize a frame. So this is just like a super approachable and budget-friendly way of upgrading your gallery wall, or that one frame that's hanging in your bedroom that you've been dying to get a new frame for. So yeah, first things first, we got this clock. And I've already taken the mechanism out of the clock. I kind of like how it's circular and that it kind of like break up the monotony of like square or rectangle frames just to have something like round in there. Whether or not we use it, it's not that big a deal. I think this was like $4 from Value Village. I don't really have a print to put in it, but I had this like really pretty floral peel and stick. I think this came from one of the wallpaper companies that we've worked with in the past, and they just kind of included this in the box. So I thought it would be really cool to put like a little floral on the inside of this clock. I'm just gonna do this real quick, pump out an easy 30-minute frame, probably take me 15. So I'm just gonna undo the backing here. It's actual glass, which is cool. I'm just gonna remove this guy and hopefully use this as my template. Just gonna trace this clock face. I need to mark where the little screw holes go. Just cutting it out with a little X-Acto knife. Gonna notch out for those screws. And here's the best part. This is wallpaper, so I'm just gonna stick it. And I got some Windex for the glass. Just gonna polish this up. It hasn't been cleaned in like probably 30 years. This looks pretty old. And I just put it all back together. Okay, there you have it. This is your 15-minute frame. What was once a clock is now a picture frame. So that is very fun and easy to do. That looks pretty sweet. I hope Alexandra likes this one, but we'll see. Anyways, I'm gonna put this with the pile. All right, so the next 30-minute frame is gonna be this frame here. I found at Value Village for $5.99. Really simple, easy hack for you guys to do at home is just to resize a frame. So let's just say I'm head over heels for this frame in particular, but it doesn't quite fit the art I want to frame, like this one. Easy hack is just to resize it. It's very easy, no glue required. The only tool you really need is a miter saw and a glass cutter and a utility knife maybe. This frame is stapled together, like the miters aren't glued together. So because we already have two really well done miter cuts, I'm only gonna use my miter saw to cut this corner and this corner, and I'm gonna keep these untouched. Pretty easy, no tape measure required. I'm just gonna use the actual print itself as my template. So I'm just gonna mark where I need my inside miters to be. Put an indicator of which direction your miter is gonna be in the offcut. All right, so now that we have our one half of the frame cut, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this and I'm gonna trace those measurements on the back of this frame so that when we do cut, it's gonna be mirrored and it's gonna fold open and it's gonna create our full frame. So I'm just tracing it on the back side. And I'm gonna take the pencil mark off. When I cut, I'm gonna remove that pencil mark. Let's take it over to the miter saw again. Look at that. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm just gonna attach these all together with some L-shaped brackets. I know these are oversized, but that's all I got. Okay, we're gonna pre-drill. Lastly, I just have this little wood furniture and floor repair marker. So this is just gonna repair any scratches that are on the frame. Rather than oiling or sanding and restaining this, I'm just gonna put a little bit of marker wherever there was a little bit of tear out from the saw or scratches just from this being an old frame. Okay, that is looking pretty nice. For the glass, I've got this little glass cutter here, and I'm just gonna trace this print onto the glass. I'm gonna make the glass a little bit smaller, just indicating where that corner is. I'm gonna take my speed square and make sure this is all nice and square. I like to use a straight edge when cutting glass. One swift, even motion all the way across. Okay, boom. Next piece, straight line. Ready? Boom, we got our glass. So now we can pop that glass right in there. Look at that. Fits like a glove. Just about. There we go. Sick. I'm gonna use this backing board here because this backing board has built-in hangers. You see that? It's got like a built-in hanger that's kind of punched in there. So I'm gonna take this glass, I'm gonna trace and line up that to as center as possible. Cut, cut, cut. Okay, we got our backing board. Glass, pop that in. Okay, print, backing board. Put that in there. Fold these clips down that were from the frame before. Holy smokes. And boom. We have our picture frame with the hanger all built in. Look at that. Glass. Ooh, and it looks like it has like a little mat to it too. That is so sick. And look at the time. 12:25. So it's 33 minutes rather than 30 minutes. So in 33 minutes, we made this print a custom frame from an old frame that we found at Value Village. So that is so sick. I'm not saying that this is like the nicest frame I've ever seen, but if you find something like a little bit nicer at Value Village that you can't pass up, and you take it home and you don't really have a print to put in it, you can custom fit that frame to a print in 30 minutes. I did it in 33, so I think you can do it in 30. Anyways, very satisfying. I'm gonna add this to the frame pile. All right, the next 30-minute frame we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little MDF frame for this guy. We're just gonna be cutting out a frame from this piece of 1/8 inch thick MDF that I found on the side of the road. I'm cutting out the center of the picture frame using my table saw and a jigsaw, but really you can just use a super sharp utility knife here. You don't need any special tools. Okay. Nice, we have our frame. I'm tracing little bobbins onto the MDF using a roll of tape and a pencil. I'm not too worried about how perfect it needs to look here because we only have 30 minutes. I'm just going for it, cutting it out with a jigsaw. Hey, there we go. I'm spray painting the frame using some old green spray paint that I found in the back of the cupboard that I think will just add a really nice pop of color to this maximalist picture frame wall. It's 4:21. I'm so sorry, it's taking a little bit more time than I thought. I'm just gonna add a little bit of double-sided tape into the corners. Just a little bit, not too much. Okay, there we have it. 30-minute frame done in 40 minutes. I was a little ambitious with this frame with all of the cutouts, and I lost a lot of time using my table saw, which I didn't really need to do, but this looks very sick. I'm very happy with this. It's very cool. So all I did was table saw for the straight cuts, jigsaw, roll of tape, sandpaper, spray paint, free MDF I found on the sidewalk. It can't get much faster and cheaper than this, and it looks really, really cool. So I'm really happy with this. I think Alexandra will be happy with this as well. I'm gonna add this to the pile. So now it's time to see how they look on Niall and Freya's wall. I just love how unique each frame is from one another. If I were to spend the same amount of time on each frame, then I was worried that they would all kind of look roughly the same or kind of have the same effect. But because we have this amazing checkerboard end grain frame on the wall versus like this MDF frame that we just slapped on top of an old frame, it just feels a lot more eclectic. It definitely gives this like maximalist variation that we were kind of going for. Now it's time for the part of the video where I talk about what I learned and what I could do differently. And first up, 3-day frames, they take 3 days each. As you guys saw in the video, I had this big vision. I went to the hardware store and I got all these materials that I ended up returning mostly. And at the thrift store, got all these frames that are now sitting and collecting dust in the workshop. What I should have done differently is probably planned all the frames from the get-go rather than kind of getting in over my head and overwhelmed. Let me know in the comments down below which frame is your favorite. I hope you guys enjoyed this crazy video. I hope it inspires you guys to make some frames at home, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.